Air Marshal Bhatia joining me, Vinod Bhatia, Veer Chakra and Bar, an ace fighter pilot joining us on this broadcast. Air Marshal Kapoor with us on this broadcast. Air Marshal Bhatia, your reading of what transpired as you look at these images, does this appear to be, the aircraft unable to pull up, and would we be able to know why?
Yes, basically, when you're watching the images, you can see that the aircraft was actually in a downward maneuver and he was coming, pulling out of the dive. When he was pulling out of the dive, he has not been able to actually recover fully and mushed into the ground, as we say. So basically the accident has happened because of that. But what has caused the accident, whether there was a slight control problem or whether a pilot did not have sufficient height to recover from that maneuver, that will only be found out when the court of inquiry is conducted and goes into depth of it.
What does this mean for the Tejas journey, Air Marshal Kapoor? A crash of this nature taking place at something as prestigious as the Dubai Airshow.
Tejas program will continue as planned. The court of inquiry, which goes into this accident, the analysis would obviously be shared with the designers and the people to put in place the safety measures, what would be required for its better upkeep thereafter. So every accident, every court of inquiry goes into all aspects, aeromedical aspects to technical aspects to operational aspects, and whatsoever are the recommendations and findings are shared with all the air crew, ground crew, squadrons, and the OEM. So in this case, OEM being HAL, whatever comes out of this accident would be shared with HAL, in depth for them to analyze and improve if there's any malfunction of mechanical or any other nature, which I don't know at this stage.
Okay. Sir, in your look, I want to quickly bring in Shivani Sharma joining us on the broadcast. Shivani, you've been speaking to your sources in the Indian Air Force and also those in Dubai. Do we have a bigger picture just as yet what may have happened?
Gaurav, it's too early to say and to even give out that idea of what may have happened. But yes, certainly the kind of maneuver that was there, it shows that the pilot was totally in control of the aircraft until he completed that maneuver, and then the aircraft was seen hitting the ground and was unable to pull up. That means he was not aware, or he was not alert if there was a malfunction in the aircraft. He was totally taking on to those maneuvers that were planned. That was a barrel roll, as Sandeep was also pointing out, the kind of rolls that we've been seeing these fighters take on in the skies during these air shows. I've witnessed that air show in Jaisalmer, the exercise that was happening when we had the first ever Tejas crash that time, but the pilot had ejected and he was safe. Fortunately, this time, pilot did not get that time to eject and be out of this falling craft. So certainly, Gaurav, it is very unfortunate. And I also want to tell our viewers that in Sunur also we've witnessed these maneuvers of Tejas that has been the homegrown fighter that happens to be the pride of the country. It has been there for operations in 2020. If we can go by the figures, they had 10,000 flying hours without even a single incident. And thereafter also these safe flight hours kept on increasing. But now 2024 and 2025 have been the years when the first and the second Tejas has crashed. So the code of inquiry that has already been constituted will bring out more details, what happened, what went wrong.
Let me quickly bring in Air Marshal Bhatia into this conversation once again. Air Marshal Bhatia, when you look at these entire, sequence of events, and on India Today, you have the last few moments of that aircraft. So when you look at that aircraft, execute that roll, flies inverted, comes down, and then tries to pull up once again, there is very little time and distance for it to be able to do so. Now, when you look at these images, in your appreciation, sir, would the pilot not have had time to pull out or and eject in this case? Was he trying to retrieve this aircraft till the last moment? What could have gone wrong that he was unable to bail out?
Well, the way I look at it initially, when I'm looking at these images, what appears to me that, as you have mentioned very rightly, that pilot was in full control of the aircraft, and if there is something which has happened, is during the pull out of the dive. When he was pulling out of the dive, there is a possibility that the aircraft has mushed into the ground. That means as you know, as he's coming down and he's pulling out, the aircraft has got a certain inertia. So that inertia takes it down, and it takes little time to come up. And therefore, you must have that much of height available to you to be able to complete the maneuver. In this particular case, it appears that the aircraft has mushed into the ground very slowly. And why the pilot has not ejected? Because I feel that he was in full control of the aircraft, and most probably he knew or he thought that he would be able to pull out. It is just a question of few feet, I think,
Yes.
as far as I'm concerned, which has resulted the difference or made the difference between a safe pullout and the crash.
That's a very important point you're making. So what you're saying is, if the pilot had just a couple of more feet and was at a slightly higher altitude, he would have been able to execute this pullout and rise once again. Unfortunately, because of the speed and the altitude which he lacked, it mushed into the ground, or it crashed in this case. But sir, when you have a zero ejection seat, that even on the runway or on ground the pilot can eject, there are rockets that takes the ejection seat higher and the parachute deploys. Would that not have been possible, or almost no time to do so?
Well, I personally feel that it is also possible as to what exactly the pilot was thinking when he was conducting that particular maneuver. In all probability, he was sure that he'd pull out of the dive. It is just that at the last moment, you see that the aircraft has, as we call it, has mushed into the ground while recovering from the dive. And in my mind, I think the pilot was actually fully, confident that he'll be able to pull out of the dive. But it's just, as I mentioned, a few feet. If he was a few feet higher, he would have been able to carry out a safe recovery, unless something has gone wrong with the aircraft at the last moment, which is very unlikely.
In this case, in a fighter plane like this, the conversation that took place between the pilot and the ATC, and in this particular case, conversation that was taking place between the pilot and his team on ground, information from that, from the black box, what else would give information? And does a light combat aircraft, sir, have instrumentation that tells you the distance from ground, that it tells you to pull up just in case you're flying too close to the ground?
Absolutely. You have the altitude, you have got all the instruments which are available in all other aircraft also are available in this particular aircraft. And it always is showing you exactly what is the height of the aircraft above the ground. The point is here, when you're doing low level aerobatics, then it's a question of giving that little safety margin, that is needed for you to be able to recover safely. And once again, I am saying it is a very, very unfortunate accident. It should not have happened, actually, according to me, but it happened because of the just last few feet which were not available to the pilot to be able to pull out safely.
Okay. Shivani, what are you learning from the Indian Air Force? What kind of maneuvers and air display were planned? Okay, give me a moment. We reestablish that link with Shivani in just a moment. But, sir, when you look at the journey of the Tejas Light Combat Aircraft from the drawing board, that very ambitious plan to have an indigenous light combat aircraft, to the problems that India faced with the GE 404 engines, the delay in supplies, a lot of, after the Pokhran tests in 1998, a lot of foreign sanctions which hampered its journey. While it may have helped India develop our own fly-by-wire system, bring in a lot of our own avionics, um, did you find this plane anywhere lacking in anything during your time in the Indian Air Force, sir? Air Marshal Bhatia.
Well, yeah, as I mentioned to you, that the aircraft throughout its phase of development has proved to be a very, very safe aircraft. Its fly-by-wire system is also, it was conceived and actually created in India itself. And I can tell you that all the safety factors had been taken into account. And it is actually evident that the aircraft throughout its development had no case at all where we had any problem with this. And this has happened only now that this thing has taken place. And this has taken place, to my mind, either something has gone wrong at the last moment, or maybe the height was not sufficient for the aircraft to recover safely.
Okay, and this would not hamper the wider Tejas project. Sandeep Unnithan back with me on this big story. Sandeep, you took this time off to speak to your sources. What more information can you add? Very sketchy details just as yet. Do we know the kind of maneuvers that the pilot was executing as part of the plan, and what didn't go according to plan?
Well, Gaurav, the pilot was clearly executing what is called a barrel roll. And a barrel roll is something where the pilot takes up like that, and then he comes down and then very close to the ground, and then he pulls up back again. It shows the maneuverability of the aircraft. It's a skill that all pilots who are very proficient on a particular design like to show the audience. And in this case, it happens that for various reasons, we don't know exactly what. Air Marshal Bhatia has mentioned some of the possible causes. The pilot could not pull out of that barrel roll, and it led to what is possibly called a controlled flight into terrain, or CFT, and it's utterly tragic what we are seeing here, Gaurav. The pilot, the statement says that the pilot could not bail out of the aircraft. We're looking at the first fatality in a Tejas crash, two crashes as on date. This is the first fatality on a Tejas crash. It's a very sad day indeed for the Indian Air Force, for this great program that will give us 220 Tejas Mark 1As for the Indian Air Force. And I'm sure it is from one of two squadrons, possibly the number 18 squadron or the number 45 squadron, which have inducted and flown these Mark 1 Tejas aircraft. It's a sad day for the Indian Air Force, Gaurav, and I'm sure the inquiry will reveal the exact causes of what happened. But as you said, the larger issue of whether the Tejas will continue or not as India's backbone future light fighter, it is that decision has already been taken, Gaurav.
Oh,
But the inquiry will
absolutely.
go into all of
India
these
needs
factors.
made in India aircraft. India needs this. And, from what all experts tell me, that they will press ahead with the program. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. In case there's something wrong that comes out in a court of inquiry, that will be sorted out. The engine made in America, the fly-by-wire system made in India, some avionics completely indigenous, some from different countries, but then meshed in together very effectively. The aircraft has flown very well. The Indian Air Force has put a lot of faith in Tejas Mark 1A, and then ultimately orders for another 90 odd aircraft have been placed for the Tejas Mark II, and which would indicate, so the first crash, as we are pointing out, was in Jaisalmer. That was on 12th of March in 2024, and the second crash has just taken place right now, just hours earlier at the Dubai Airshow. I have Group Captain Narang joining me on the broadcast. Group Captain Narang, your appreciation of the initial pictures that we see. A court of inquiry is being instituted, but what would you conclude from these images, prima facie?
No, I think this is, as covered earlier by the expert, this appears to be a controlled flight into the terrain. So it's difficult to identify whether it's a technical failure or a human error. It will come out over a period of time through a technical court of inquiry. But what is relevant is this machine was one of the safest flying machines, having flown close to 5,000 sorties before the first ejection.
Yes.
And even this ejection, so far, this aircraft did not have any problem. Engine did not have any problem. In fact, it was one of the very safe programs developed world over. If you see all other programs, the most of the fighters had problems in the development phase. However, this has done much better than most of the fighter aircraft development programs in the world.